I went into my junior year of high school, I think I said, fuck that guy. I'm tired of this. This is annoying. So I just drew on my own from then on. And that effectively killed my wanting to go to school for art. I had was looking at art colleges and shit and had, scholarships lined up and trying to figure out where to go. It was like the only thing I had a chance of getting any sort of scholarship in.
Yeah, me
but
too.
Meanwhile, it's just teachers, man, you don't realize what a gigantic fucking effect having a good or a shitty teacher can have on you.
But they're cutting their salaries over and over again. I just saw they're cutting it again.
Yeah.
And I think teachers should be one of the most important things ever, like up there with doctors.
Yeah, it's gigantic.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we're so short-sighted when it comes to that.
Yeah. What is that? You're raising the child from the beginning. That should be the most important thing.
It should be huge. People that can influence your children and people that say mean shit. Like, I will never forget, I had a math teacher in high school who was just fucking boring, and the class was boring, and she was this black lady who had a black accent. Like, she would mispronounce words all the time. She had terrible grammar. And yet she would shit all over you if you didn't understand her math problems. And she was in there doing her math problem, and I was bored, and I was drawing or something. Usually that's what I did in class. I would draw all over my notebooks and stuff like that. And she goes, she looks up and she sees me not paying attention. So she goes, "Mr. Rogan, would you like to come up here and do both of these problems for the class?" And I said, "Do you want me to do both of those problems?" And everybody started fucking howling. And so she said, "Go down to the dean's office right now." I said, "Okay, but when I get back, I'm going to do both of those problems." And everybody was laughing. She goes, "Go ahead, laugh at Mr. Rogan. Mr. Rogan ain't going nowhere. He's going nowhere in life." And I'm like, at least I know how to say both. And she goes, "Get out of my classroom." And she kicked me out.
Wow, that's so awesome.
That was the beginning of my time as a stand-up comedian, because I felt like I was defending myself. I wasn't doing anything to you. I was just sitting there scribbling in my notebook, Right. I just wasn't paying attention because I was bored out of my fucking head, and I had problems with authority. Yeah. But she just, liked to be the lady to call on you if you ain't paying attention. She would get mad. But meanwhile, this fucking bitch couldn't even speak right. She said both. Would you like to come up here and do both of these? I will never forget it. It's in my mind, it's like a movie playing out. Because the anger in my head that this fucking dummy was trying to make me look dumb in front of everybody just because I was scribbling and I wasn't paying attention to your... My opinion on math was always okay, math is very essential. But don't we have calculators now? We do. Right. And isn't there an endless supply of batteries? There is. Done.
Right.
I'm done. There's only a finite amount of things to pay attention to in the day, and I don't give a fuck about these wacky equations that you're making me solve and figure out. I know how to add. I know how to divide. I know how to multiply. Is it, or are we done here?
Right.
Do I have to keep going? Is this really gonna? You're making me be a fucking square peg and fit into your fucking round hole. It's I'm not. I don't want to do what you want me to do. This is nonsense.
It's weird nowadays. I can't even imagine going to school with Google. Because then I'd be like, no, I don't want to learn it. I could just search it if I need it. I don't get what you...
Dude, that was a problem. I used to watch a lot of documentaries even when I was a kid, and I got in trouble. Again, people always say, you're a comedian, were you a class clown? I was not really a class clown. What I used to do, though, is draw a lot of cartoons about our teachers, getting involved, doing shit. And we had this one teacher that was really annoying, Mr. Holman, and Holman, very serious. But he was wrong about a lot of shit. And I was, I was fucking 15 years old, and I was in class, and I was, again, bored out of my fucking mind. He had a science class, but at least science class was a little more interesting. Right. But he started going on about Lake Erie. Lake Erie's a dead lake, and this and that. He started talking about all the pollution that's involved in Lake Erie. And I said, well, actually, I just saw a documentary that was on PBS that was talking about the resurgence of Lake Erie, about how Lake Erie, they've worked very hard to filter out the water, and they've done all these different things to cut down the pollutants, and they've seen a resurgence in the fish population, and he got all fucking mad at me. And I was like, have you seen this documentary? He goes, no, this is not true. And I'm like, wow. What do you mean it's not true? It's on PBS. I watched it last night.
Right.
I'm like, oh, man, all right, so you're just like them. So the next time we were in class, he had these things that would pull down projection screens,
yeah.
And I pulled the projection screens up and I drew cartoons of him. And then I pulled the projection screens down and covered them. Yeah. So he went to draw on the chalkboard, and as he pulled the chalkboard up, there's all these fucking cartoons of him saying wacky shit. And he had this thing that he would do, he would do this crazy thing with his hands where he would move his hands like this. And then I had this other teacher, Mr. White, and he was only like 5'2". So I drew him all the time, but every time I drew him standing on something. He's either standing on a box or standing on a chair or standing on a stool. And I drew it just like him.
It's so funny, dude.
And I had an anthropology teacher who was obsessed with Jane Goodall and the monkeys. You know, Jane Goodall lived with chimpanzees. So I drew this one kid who was this football player who was a nice kid, but he was always kissing her ass because he wanted her to like him so he could get better grades. So I drew him banging her, and if I can look like her, it looked like him. And I drew him banging her, saying, you know, she was like, "Oh, give it to me, monkey style." And I passed it around the class, you know. Like, I got suspended on 2 separate occasions for drawing cartoons.
That's funny.
I got sent home for drawing cartoons.
Me too. That's the only thing I would normally get in trouble for. I would do the same things, but with overhead projectors. I would, draw, dicks and penises. There was an Indian guy in our class. I'd always make fun of his farts because he had really bad farts. And then one time they pulled the whole class out, and they're like, all right, Omar has really bad gas because of his diet, and it's not funny. And if you guys make fun of it anymore, you guys are all going to be in trouble. I remember this speech. So, of course, then I only drew Omar for the rest of the year. I draw this Indian guy farting on people and stuff like that.
How ridiculous is that you're telling kids not to make fun of farts because it's not funny?
I know.
How disingenuous is that? You cannot tell someone that farts aren't funny. As soon as you say farts aren't funny, I'm not listening to you anymore. Right. Because you're not being honest with me.
You can say farts don't smell.
Yeah.